What's up, everybody? I'm Matt Silva, and today we're talking about 5 essential tips that you need to consider when planning your next cosplay. I don't know what I'm doing. Alright, I'm about to go over 5 essential tips for planning projects. Now, I know I said that this could be for your next cosplay project, but this could be for anything. It could be for props, it could be for work. As long as it's a creative endeavor, this is a great way to structure your next project. Let's talk about making sure that a project really meets what's important, which is what is your skill level as it stands now versus what's an acceptable amount of challenge and growth in an area you haven't taken on. Something I find is really challenging is kind of self-auditing your talent, right? I mean, that's a really hard thing for most of us to do. Oftentimes our egos are overinflated by our moms who are like, everything you do is so good. Unless you have my mom who's very brutally honest. You want to be able to take a little bit of time to really think about what have you already done in the past? What have you gotten good at? What's still a struggle for you? And what's an area that you want to kind of focus? This may be the opportunity to take time to find a character that maybe you're not super passionate about. You enjoy the series it comes from, or you like the style of the design, but that it has, like, I would say a 75% ratio of what you're already skilled at, and then add about 25% of what you're looking to grow in. That way you know that, like, you're not going to be relying on this super challenging, unfamiliar thing to kind of carry you through the final design. You're relying on what skills you have, and you're giving yourself something achievable to take on as a challenge. So take some time, scale it back, and think about what really is a measurable and appropriate amount of challenge for you. Let's talk about the next part, which is trying to understand what your limitations are in terms of time, material, or budget. This is a huge, huge thing. You could be the most skilled person, but if you don't have time, material, or money, that's really going to hamstring your ability to take on certain kinds of projects. So really consider those factors. There's sort of like this, the golden triangle, right? It's like good, fast, or cheap, pick 2. You really need to make sure you have 2 of those, and if you don't, you're going to have to get really, really creative with the design. And that's a really important part of setting yourself up for success, because then you're not putting yourself in a box you can't get out of. Step 2 really takes everything from step 1 and just builds on top of it, but in a way that sort of breaks up your project into segments. And this is where time and experience really help guide you in terms of making these decisions down the road. But definitely get in the habit of doing this. And that's being able to look at your project and figuring out step by step which things need to happen first so that you can sequentially build on top of those different pieces. My philosophy is to try to break things down into really simple things that have clear steps that all build on top of each other. What do you do when you have to do something out of order, when it doesn't make sense? The best thing you can do in that situation is really just try to take time to actually put in wiggle room. Well, I know I don't really know exactly how much costuming is going to be under there, so I'm going to make it out of a material that's a little flexible, so if I need to give it room or push it in a little bit, I can do that. Or maybe I just make the straps extra long because I can always just cut them. Those are the areas that you can kind of cheat the order in which you take on pieces of a project, but you got to do it really smart, and you got to minimize the amount of times that you do out of order. Tip number 3 is all about trying to translate a design to something that's proportioned for you. It does always help the more that you gear things for your physical proportions, your like natural features. That's going to help. Not required by any stretch. I mean, do whatever you want. It's all about having fun. But the more that you use what you already have to your advantage, the easier time you're going to have tackling the problems of usually technical things. You want to think about the story, whether that's literal, real story, or just the emotion behind the piece, whether that's a costume or prop, you name it. There's a lot to be said for taking a character from another source of media and translating it into something that's wearable. You know, even something that you see in a movie and making it real is quite a challenge. So, taking step 3 into consideration is massively important when it comes to being able to truly show the audience, your fans, the people at the convention you're at, showing them what it is that's actually intended. A lot of times what's on the screen or what's in the pages of the comic book, they don't quite tell the story like they do when you know all the information from having read it. So really definitely take step 3 into consideration on how is your project visually going to tell the story, so you don't have to rely on words or backstory people maybe don't know. And how do you do it in a way that looks believable and realistic so you get the best possible outcome from what people see in your projects. Okay, tip 4 might feel like a little bit of a cheat, but I think it's super, super important, and that's networking. Networking is so important to planning your projects because there are just some things you can't do. When we, at our shop, when we were building huge statues for Halo, we don't do big, like welded armatures. We just don't. We built a relationship with a metal shop that was able to do them for us. And in the future, we want to use them for other projects. Building the relationship with somebody, it's so important on a couple different levels that are really important to me. One, it builds community. It puts more work in more people's hands. And it's really, really great for being able to create relationships that work together. Work hard to build relationships that you're able to give back to them as much as they're able to give back to you. It's so important. I mean, when you're on social media, when you're at conventions, and being able to be like, oh, this other person, I did this with this person, it leaves huge opportunities to build community, to show people how relatable, this craft can be. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to be the best at everything. But if you build really strong, meaningful relationships with other artisans who care about the craft, who do good work, it builds everyone up. And perhaps there'll be a project where you can help them. It's just so massively important. I have to tell you, there's almost no project that I haven't had some help with. Even if that was just advice, even if it was just advice from somebody I'd networked, where I was going to do it, but I was in an area that I was totally in the dark about. Maybe I just needed guidance or assistance in terms of what to do, where to start. That's huge. There's definitely two different schools of thought on networking. It's sort of like a what can I get from other people, and that's just atrocious. Don't be that person. Don't look at me. Look at me. Don't be that person. Well, what networking really should be is about lifting people up in a community where everybody does something different. Everyone has something unique to offer. And finding a community and building it up is a great way to not only grow yourself, but grow the people around you so that everyone just gets lifted up with success. I think this is so important, and if you aren't working with other people on your cosplays, I would highly recommend it. Don't be afraid to share the credit. I mean, it's an amazing thing to be able to bring someone else in on a project and be like, yeah, I made this thing, but this guy made this piece here. Isn't it incredible? Look how awesome they are. And I know in the moment, sometimes, let's be honest, most of us deal with insecurity. It's super important to realize that sharing credit and experience with people you network with, you may feel like they're getting the glory, they're outshining you, but I promise you they're not. They appreciate that people think about things bigger than themselves. It's just really important. And if you aren't currently doing that, you really should. Tip 5, probably going to be everyone's least favorite tip, but to me, the most important tip is have fun failing. I'm serious. Have fun failing. If you do it the right way, it can teach you so much, more than success will. And I know these all sound like silly platitudes, but seriously, it is fundamentally important. Maybe take some time to figure out how you can do things you know you're going to fail at and learn to enjoy the process. One of the biggest things when it comes to doing a project is learning that the hardest part sometimes is just letting go and leaning into the moment. It is so hard to do when you're in it, but if you make a habit of knowing things are going to be challenging, knowing failure is ahead of you, and having a routine and a practice of stepping away and being able to adjust and come back to the situation fresh and with a new perspective, you're going to find yourself coming up with more and better creative solutions to your projects. Well, with that being said, I think that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you feel like we earned it, and if you want, hit that bell notification so that the algorithm gods will let you know when we've posted more content. We'll be posting content pretty much once a week, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys more. So I will see you in the next one.
Nailed it.